Today we're going to look at the Vela Tango 510e, so the 510 electric high-low lift. And we're going to look at how to investigate an issue that might be happening, which is causing the chair to not rise and not fall. So the chair is in a fixed position. The most common fault of the chair not rising and falling is that the customer has not kept the chair on full charge, and therefore the batteries over time have started to lose their ability to hold power and hold charge, and therefore the batteries are dead, which is the reason it's not charging. So 90% of the time, the fault is actually going to lie with the batteries being flat. The equipment you'll need to do this: a 12-volt battery tester, a spare fuse, a spare set of 12-volt batteries that are fully charged, a flathead screwdriver, a replacement high-low armrest that also you need to make sure is fully working, and then some spare replacement wire clips. So once we've got the chair in front of us, we now need to investigate what's causing the problem of the chair not rising and falling. And there are 6 simple steps that we can follow to do that. The first of those is to check that the power cable is pushed all the way into the armrest to operate the switches. It sounds extremely simple, and we would normally have asked the customer to try that themselves first before we send an engineer out onto site, but you'd be surprised how many times they've not done it correctly. And it's happened to me on numerous occasions where I've arrived to find either the cable is not plugged in at all, or it's only plugged in halfway, meaning that the buttons won't engage and therefore the chair won't rise and fall. So step 1 is ensure that the power cable is pushed all the way in, test the switches under the arm, and the chair will rise and fall. Another thing to make sure of with regards to the cable is that the cable itself is complete. It's not been either chewed through by a pet or been caught or snagged on something and actually has split in the wire that may be causing a loose connection. So the next step, after we've checked that the cable has been pushed all the way in, is to test the armrest where the high-low switches are underneath. Take the cable out and remove the armrest. Generally, if this is a problem, you'll find that one of the high or low buttons is a bit sticky, okay, and you might be able to see it that way. But the best way to test it is to use a spare high-low arm pad with switches that you know work. Take the cable, we don't need to put it back into the armrest, just plug the cable all the way in and make sure the chair then goes up and goes down. If the chair's working, then we found the problem and it's a replacement armrest that's required with the high-low switches. Once we've made sure the cable is pushed in correctly and we've tested the armrest, if the chair still isn't going up and down, then we need to move further down the chair and try to start investigating the fuse and the batteries. To get access to the fuse and batteries, we need to remove the battery casing. This is 2 parts that simply pull apart. The best way to get at that is to actually turn the chair round, and using a flathead screwdriver, there's a little gap that we can then lever that apart. So once we've levered it from the back, we can then start to just gently prise these 2 parts apart, and we can remove all the battery casing. Just make sure to do that fairly gently, as the little connections here can easily snap off, and then we need to replace the casing itself. So now we've removed the battery casing and we've got access to the batteries. Okay, and you can see the red wire that's coming from the actual high-low actuator itself coming to this side of the battery, and then we have the black wire that comes to the other side. So this step, we want to make sure that all of the connections, the 2 on this side and the 2 on the other side of the battery, are fully connected. And by that, we just mean that they are fully pushed in onto the little battery connector. You may find when you're investigating the connections on the batteries that one or possibly more of the wires from the actuator are not fully pushed on to the little battery connection. It may be that it's actually completely off. To rectify that, which very simply, just going to push that all the way on, make sure it's all the way to the front and we've got a nice connection. Check the other ones. Once we've done that, again, test the chair. The chair now goes up and down, therefore we know it was basically a loose or a missing connection that was causing the fault. So when we're testing the connections on the batteries, you may find that inside the clip has started to widen. If that's the case, you may find that when you push it back on, it feels quite loose and wobbly and doesn't stay in place very easily. Even if you try and push that all the way in and it's still got that a significant wobble to it, when you've left and the chair perhaps is moved or the chair is knocked, that can easily then fall out, in which case then we're going to get another call to go back because the chair again won't rise and fall. You should have a bag of replacement clips and that can just be removed and a new connection put on. So we've checked the connections at all 4 points on the batteries and they're all fully connected. However, when we test the chair still won't rise and fall. So we then need to move on to the next step, which would be to check the fuse wire. If we turn the chair round to the back, you can see the fuse casing at the back here. We can prise that open, just pull that apart, and that reveals the fuse pushed inside. We can take that fuse out, just simply pulls out. This fuse is absolutely fine, in which case I can replace the fuse and then move on to the next stage of testing. However, if there's a break in the fuse, I can get a replacement fuse, put that into place, reconnect the housing, and then test the chair. If it was the fuse that was the problem, we've replaced it and now the chair moves up and down. The chair works off a dual battery operation, so sometimes the first battery we can test may show it's got some power, but the other battery might be completely flat. So always test both of the batteries. And both of these batteries are showing that they're dead. If both the batteries have no charge or very, very little charge, then we know it's going to be these that need to be replaced. But we want to make sure we test that while we're on site. So get your spare set of batteries and we're going to reconnect it and make sure that the chair goes up and down just to make sure that there's no issue with the actuator as well. I'm now going to reconnect my test batteries to make sure that was definitely the problem. And then I want to test to make sure that with brand new batteries, the chair now goes up and down. So in that case, we've identified it was the batteries that were the issue and they'll need replacing. I've got my spare batteries that I know are fully charged. I've just tested my batteries to make sure. Now we want to reconnect it. It's important that when we're putting the batteries back into the chair, that we have a circuit. So we want positive or the red side to be on the front right of the chair and the negative to be on the front left of the chair to make sure we have a full connection. If we had positive and positive at the front, we aren't going to get the proper circuit and the chair's still not going to go up and down. So we've established that the reason this chair wasn't going up and down was because the batteries were flat. At that point, it's important to speak to the customer and explain that they need to keep the chair on regular charge. We'd recommend putting it on charge overnight, at least every other day, to ensure that the batteries keep full power. You can't overcharge the chair, so there's no issue with them leaving it on overnight. If the customer insists that they have been putting the chair on charge every day, every other day, and they can't understand why it's not working, then it may just be a good idea to have a look at the charger itself. It's a universal charger that has a UK plug attached, which can slide on and off. It may be that the charger has been knocked, in which case it's not fully down. You can see how it's poking out the top. Just need to ensure that it's all plugged in. We've tested the batteries and both batteries show that they have full charge or sufficient charge. Then we know that the problem lies with the actual high-low actuator itself, and it will be this part that needs replacing.